Welcome to the My Hoffs podcast. This week we examine the 4 best bets of the college football weekend with our Friday forecast. The forecast is now 13-7 on the season, thanks in large part to its second consecutive 3-1 weekend. Last week's gambling game ball goes to Mizzou's Marcus Murphy. Murphy pulled the Tigers' tail out of the fire with a 66-yard punt return for a touchdown, his third return TD of 2012.
Murphy all the way back to about the 35-yard line. He's got a wall in front of him. Oh, what a block! That frees him up, and this could be 6. And it is.
And now on to the forecast picks for week number 6. Out of the gate, we have my favorite bet of the weekend. Mississippi State is traveling to Lexington to take on the downtrodden Wildcats of Kentucky. The Bulldogs, despite boasting a 4-0 record, are just 10-point favorites in this one, and to tell you the truth, I'm not sure why. The Bulldogs have been excellent on defense this year, forcing 15 turnovers on the young season, which is second best in the nation. The point spread, falling from 14.5 to 10, may have something to do with MSU's lousy record against the spread under head coach Dan Mullen, but I'm not advocating a weekly bet on the boys from Starkville just to play in this spot. Last season they traveled to UK as a 10-point road chalk, and they covered that spread, besting UK 28-16, and I believe this year's Bulldog team is much better. But the main reason I like MSU here is that UK will be playing musical chairs with 2 freshman quarterbacks. A quick hook can rattle even a veteran quarterback, and with 2 wide-eyed freshmen splitting snaps, I just don't see UK getting into any kind of offensive rhythm. The books may also be putting too much emphasis on Dan Mullen's record coming off a bye. He's just 1-2 against the spread in those situations as a head coach, but both times he failed to cover against Alabama. The forecast won't hold that against him. Stick with fading lousy teams with freshman quarterbacks and bet MSU -10 on the road. Now the forecast has correctly picked 3 straight upset specials, so the pressure's on here in week 6. This week I like Florida to upset number 4 LSU in the Swamp. Jeff Driscoll has been impressive this year, completing nearly 70% of his passes to go with just 1 turnover. Driscoll also adds a rushing element at quarterback that the Gators have been missing since Tebow graduated. If Driscoll can pick up a few first downs with his legs, the Gators have a real shot at pulling off this upset. Now enough about the offense, because truthfully this game is all about defense. Florida had high hopes for their D this year with 10 returning starters from their 2011 unit. So far they've lived up to the hype, shutting out an explosive A&M team in the second half and stymieing future pro Tyler Bray at Neyland Stadium. Toss into the mix the return of outside linebacker Jelani Jenkins, and I believe, and I know this is blasphemy, but I believe that Florida will field the best defense on Saturday. LSU has looked, disinterested at times this year, particularly last week against Towson. When a team that elicits a collective "who" from sports fans runs for 188 yards in Death Valley, you have to start wondering if this LSU defense is truly elite without the Honey Badger taking what he wants. Both defenses will keep this game close, but I have more faith in Jeff Driscoll than I do in Zach Mettenberger at this point. Look for Caleb Sturgis to knock through a game-winning field goal in the 4th quarter for the Gators. The Gator game should be a nail-biter, so how about a sure thing? Look no further than the Georgia Tech-Clemson game. Georgia Tech has been downright awful on defense this year, and they won't be able to stop the bleeding on Saturday. Clemson welcomes back Sammy Watkins, which means the Yellow Jackets are going to have to pick their poison. Either sack the box to stop a surprisingly effective running game, or double Watkins and DeAndre Hopkins in hopes of slowing down the Tiger attack. One thing's for sure, Clemson's offensive coordinator Chad Morris has no interest in slowing things down. Look for the Tigers to snap the ball before the play clock hits 15 just about every time. And as always when it comes to betting Clemson, just check that calendar. Is it November? No? Alright, fire away. Clemson is 3-4 straight up and 2-5 against the spread the last 2 years in November. Hashtag late season swoon. And finally, we have our over-under bet of the week. A year ago, Oklahoma had national title aspirations, a Heisman Trophy contender at quarterback, and a superstar wide receiver. A year later, they enter conference play just ranked 17th behind a sputtering offense. The one bright spot for the team has been a solid defense that has avoided the big plays that haunted them in 2011. OU travels to the surface of the moon, Lubbock, Texas, for their Big 12 opener, and they'll need their defense to bring their A-game. Tech, formerly home to basketball and turf, now appears to know how to play D, as the Raiders lead the country in total defense, holding opponents to just 167 yards per game. The total for this game has settled in at 58, and that's clearly inflated by this series' high-scoring history. Last year, Tech upended the third-ranked Sooners in Norman 41-38. This time around, both teams have a well-put-together defense, and cold and windy conditions forecast for Saturday should ground the passing attacks. I like OU in a close one, 24-20. Go ahead and play the under here, and then flip on over to that LSU-Florida game on CBS. That's it for this week's podcast. For more college football, check out my recent Landmines article that details the most challenging games awaiting Alabama, Oregon, Florida State, and Georgia. For MyHoffs.com, I'm Editor-in-Chief Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening.